For the first time in over 50 years, humans traveled to the moon. 4 astronauts flew beyond Earth orbit, farther than any crew alive has ever gone. Then they turned around. No landing, no surface. After half a century of waiting, NASA deliberately stopped short. The reason has everything to do with what happens when you return at 11 kilometers per second, through a window barely half a degree wide. 4 astronauts climbed aboard a spacecraft built for the unknown. Commander Reed Wiseman, pilot Victor Glover, mission specialist Christina Koch, and Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen formed the crew of Artemis II, the first humans to travel beyond Earth's orbit since Apollo. Their destination was a point just beyond the moon, not the lunar surface itself. This was no accident or fallback plan. NASA's mission profile called Artemis II a crewed test flight. The goal was never to land. Instead, the agency set out to prove that Orion, the next-generation capsule riding atop the Space Launch System, could keep a crew alive, healthy, and in command while circling the moon and returning home. Every system, from life support to navigation, would be pushed to its limits in deep space. Aboard Orion, the crew faced a journey lasting over 9 days, with no rescue possible if something went wrong. For the first time in half a century, humans would rely on new hardware, new procedures, and new margins of safety. The mission was designed to test every layer of protection before risking a landing. Only by passing these trials could NASA clear the path for a future touchdown. For Wiseman, Glover, Koch, and Hansen, the stakes were simple. Prove that humanity is ready to cross the void again, and make it back alive. Inside Orion, survival depended on systems that had never been pushed this far from Earth. The Environmental Control and Life Support System, known as ICLSS, became the crew's invisible lifeline. Unlike the short hops of low Earth orbit, Artemis II demanded that ECLSS perform flawlessly for over 9 days, recycling air, scrubbing out carbon dioxide, and keeping humidity and temperature within safe limits. NASA's own mission objectives set the bar. Oxygen production had to exceed 5.5 kilograms per day, enough for 4 active astronauts. The carbon dioxide scrubbers, a blend of advanced filters and chemical cartridges, were rated to remove at least 4 kilograms of carbon dioxide daily, matching the metabolic output of the entire crew during exercise, sleep, and emergencies. Every breath, every exhale became a test of engineering under deep space conditions. Humidity could not creep above 70%, or condensation would threaten electronics. Temperatures had to stay within a narrow band, neither freezing the crew nor overheating vital systems. Pressure checks, leak monitoring, and backup oxygen reserves became part of the daily routine. Even small failures, an air valve stuck or a filter clogged, could escalate with no rescue possible at lunar distance. NASA's priorities made it clear. Artemis II was not about planting a flag, but about proving that life itself could be sustained in the void. The mission's success would be measured in oxygen levels, carbon dioxide readings, and the steady hum of fans and pumps. Only by mastering these basics could astronauts ever hope to land, work, and return from the lunar surface. With life support under constant watch, the next challenge would be testing whether Orion could navigate and guide itself across the gulf between worlds. Deep space navigation demands a different kind of precision. Once Artemis II left Earth's orbit, the crew and flight controllers faced a stark reality. There is no GPS signal at lunar distance, no satellite constellation to lean on. Instead, Orion relied on its guidance, navigation, and control suite. A blend of star trackers, inertial sensors, and ground-based tracking relayed through NASA's deep space network. Every course correction had to be calculated and executed with almost surgical accuracy. The error margin at closest approach to the moon, called perisyntheon, had to stay within 1/10 of a kilometer. Too wide, and the spacecraft's return angle would stray outside the narrow corridor needed for a safe reentry. The trajectory itself was a free return loop, a path that once set would naturally bring Orion home, even if its engines failed after the lunar swing-by. This passive safety net shaped every aspect of the mission. 4 planned mid-course correction burns, each orchestrated by the flight dynamics team, allowed NASA to fine-tune the approach and return legs. The trajectory's higher perisyntheon, about 1,200 kilometers above the lunar surface, reduced gravitational perturbations and radiation exposure, but it also demanded more precise navigation than Apollo's original free return arcs. Autonomy became essential. Any delay or misstep in guidance could push the capsule off the razor-thin entry corridor that shielded the crew from the worst of re-entry's heat and G-forces. The flight dynamics team's calculations, the burn execution scripts, and Orion's onboard algorithms all worked together to keep the mission inside that safe window. This was not just a test of machinery, but of human and machine working in lockstep, with the margin for error measured in fractions of a kilometer and seconds of burn time. One NASA flight dynamics officer explained that the entry corridor is a knife edge, not a landing strip. As Orion raced home from lunar distance, its fate hinged on a sliver of sky barely wider than 1/3 of a degree. At nearly 11 kilometers per second, over 24,000 miles per hour, any error in the angle of attack would spell disaster. The physics are merciless. The Chapman-Robeson equation, the same one used to calculate the heat flow for meteors, predicts that even a tiny deviation in velocity or angle can push the spacecraft outside the safe corridor. If Orion dipped below the lower bound, it would skip off the atmosphere like a stone on water, lost to deep space. Too steep, and the kinetic energy would slam into the heat shield, driving temperatures past 3,000 degrees Celsius and spiking the G-forces to levels that could crush bones and cripple the capsule's structure. The margin for survival is plus or minus 0.3 degrees. That corridor, thinner than a pencil line drawn across the Pacific, is all that stands between a controlled re-entry and catastrophe. Inside Mission Control, engineers tracked the capsule's trajectory with algorithms honed since Apollo. Every thruster pulse, every correction, was calculated to keep Orion's nose aimed into the heart of the safe zone. The crew would feel the difference in their chests, peak deceleration as high as 6 or 7 GI forces, but never more. These limits weren't arbitrary. They were set by the physics of hypersonic flight, the chemistry of ablative shielding, and the absolute necessity of bringing astronauts home alive. The corridor's razor-thin window set the stage for the next trial, whether the heat shield could take the punishment. Artemis I's return to Earth revealed a hidden weakness. After splashdown, engineers found a network of micro cracks, less than 0.5 millimeter wide, spidering through the avcoat heat shield, especially near the joints where the tiles met the titanium structure. The cracks weren't visible on launch day. They grew during re-entry, forced open by the brutal thermal gradients, as the shield's outer surface shot past 3,200 degrees Celsius, while the interior stayed hundreds of degrees cooler. NASA's response was swift and methodical. The heat shield team gathered every piece of post-flight data, then rebuilt their models from the ground up. They revised the adhesive formula at the bond line, switching to a low-shrinkage, silicone-based epoxy that flexed with the shield instead of pulling it apart. The avcode itself was reformulated, gaining a 5% boost in char strength and a tighter grain structure to resist crack propagation. Every tile now faced ultrasonic scans before assembly, hunting for subsurface flaws invisible to the naked eye. Dr. Maya Patel, a lead materials engineer on the project, explained, "A crack as thin as a human hair can become a blowtorch at 11 kilometers per second. We can't afford surprises at these speeds." Margins were tightened everywhere. The allowable delta phi left over from the final burn was cut in half, capped at 15 meters per second, to keep the entry angle inside the corridor where the shield could survive. Inspection protocols became more aggressive, with high-resolution infrared bakeouts on every segment. The learning curve was steep, but the stakes were absolute. No crew would fly until the shield could be trusted with human lives. At the edge of Earth's atmosphere, Orion plunged into a world of fire and silence. Plasma, hotter than a welding torch, wrapped the capsule in a sheath that blocked every signal. For 4 to 6 minutes there was no contact, no telemetry, only the ship's own systems and the steady heartbeat of 4 astronauts. Inside, the crew gripped their harnesses as the G-loads climbed, peaking at 6.8 times Earth's gravity. Muscles strained, voices muffled by the roar, every sense focused inward. The heat shield, rebuilt and retested after Artemis I, now faced its ultimate trial. Sensors embedded in the avcode tiles transmitted their last readings before the blackout, then fell silent as friction turned air to glowing plasma. During those minutes, Orion's guidance software took over completely. The capsule adjusted its attitude by the millisecond, holding the corridor as the pressure outside doubled and then doubled again. If anything drifted out of tolerance, a spike above 8G, or a yaw of more than 2 degrees, the onboard computer stood ready to trigger emergency thrusters, but the numbers held. In the darkness, the only voices came from inside the ship. A clipped exchange later released by NASA captured Commander Wiseman's calm when he said, "Hold tight. We're through max G. Feels solid." Outside, the capsule's surface boiled away in layers, shedding more than 150 kilograms of ablator in less than 2 minutes. The blackout stretched on. Then, as Orion dropped below 45 kilometers, the plasma thinned. A burst of static, and then the ground loop snapped back to life. Telemetry returned, the G-loads eased, and Orion arced toward parachute deployment. The system had held. The crew was home. Right now, every astronaut's life depends on mastering deep space return, because the math is unforgiving, and the margin for error is 0. Artemis II draws the line between ambition and survival. Before we plant flags, we prove we can come home. The real test always comes before the landing.